Edition of Brown. Welcome everyone to this month's edition to Brown Bagging It from your backyard. I'm Harvey Webster, your host, and you're going to have in for a treat today. We have one of our favorites and a returning speaker who's going to be addressing us, Matt Valencic. If you don't know who we are affiliated with Nature in My Backyard, which is this wonderful effort to try and encourage people to plant native plants and combat invasives. And recently, I think we've talked about it the last two times, but the exciting thing is that this has originally started as an initiative of the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland in collaboration with Cuyahoga County Master Gardeners and Shaker Lakes Garden Club. And actually, it was underneath Matt Valencic, who is the chair of the education committee, that Nature in My Backyard got its start. But recently, exciting things have happened, and an organization that one of our attendees today, Nancy Lintz, was responsible for founding was Ohio Native Plant Month. And this was a 501c3 that was created to lobby for and encourage the establishment of April permanently as April as Native Plant Month. And it was, in fact, successful. And in the meantime, Nancy's left the state and encouraged Jane Ellison, who is our guiding light of Nature in My Backyard, to become involved in that effort. And we've now come up with a rebranded Ohio Native Plant Month. It's rebranded as Ohio Native Plants. OhioNativePlant.org is where you'll find it. It not only is a great landing page to find Nature in My Backyard, but it has an unbelievable wealth of resources, educational resources, and for everybody, for homeowners, for educators, for growers, and a wonderful interactive map that details where you can actually source native plants. So if we've convinced you that native plants are important, that you're going to make that move, the important thing is, well, where am I going to get them? Well, this is a place that you can go and find those nurseries or garden centers that specialize as purveyors of native plants. So it's really cool stuff. We encourage you to go to the website, again, OhioNativePlants.org, and become familiar with all the resources there. And if you ever are feeling generous and you would like to support this effort, there is no pressure, mind you, but there is an opportunity to give online and support the effort. So that's good. We have got an exciting program coming up. We have this sort of our entomological trio. We had learned about fireflies last month. We're learning about good bug, bad bug today. And in July, we have Mary Lynn Delfino talking to us about butterflying in my backyard, a match game. And that should be really, really interesting. So, stay tuned for that. Tune in. Today, we are really, really happy that Matt Valencic has agreed to return to Brown Bagging It from My Backyard. Matt is I was going to say he was a triple threat, quadruple threat. He's definitely a triple master. Matt Valencic is a master gardener affiliated with the Master Gardeners of Geauga County. He's a master birder, an extraordinary birder, and very active in the birding community, both regionally and beyond. He's also a master communicator, an incredible teacher, very passionate, articulate. He does programs all over the state on things like you want to have your warbler warm-up before you go do the biggest week in American birding, or look for warblers in your backyard. Matt's your man. He's got a whole host of programs that he does, and many of those you can find resources and links at clevelandaudubon.org. So he does amazing things, and he's also a general, mind you, in the war against buckthorn and other invasive species on Audubon sanctuaries. This man is tireless out there fighting the good fight against those species. He is the education chair of the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland. And again, as I said before, that Nature in My Backyard was part of that. He's also a member of their sanctuary committee newsletter committees. He has a BS in forest biology from State University of New York College of Environmental Science and Forestry. He had a working career in professional sales, the last 25 years in medical devices, which probably is responsible for his gift for being able to explain complicated things accessibly. A hell of a talent. 20 years of volunteering with the Boy Scouts, a scout master, an assistant scout master, with emphasis on camping, backpacking, and nature studies. When he retired in 2015, he didn't really retire. He joined the Audubon Society of Greater Cleveland and did all of those things that I mentioned before, and amazingly active in the Backyard Naturalist Speakers Bureau. You can find Matt doing programs to Audubon chapters and garden clubs literally statewide, and fabulous programs. People always have him coming back. He became a master gardener volunteer in 2017 and then became very passionate about removing non-native invasive plants in the Audubon sanctuaries. So he is our man. He's going to be talking to us today about good bug, bad bug. And before I hand it over to him, just a reminder to please mute yourselves and turn off your video. If you have questions, post them in the chat, and we'll wait till the end, and then we'll go through all the questions when Matt's completed his program. So with that, take it away, Matt Valencic.
Thank you, Harvey. I appreciate those kind words. Don't know if I deserve them all, but I do appreciate them. I'm going to find my program here and see if I can make this come up. There we go. And let's see if I can turn myself into, uh, get rid of this thing for a moment. And screen looks different over here for me now. Let's come on back here, you. There we go. Hide presenter view and show presenter view. There we go. Do I just have my screen up, Harvey, and lacking my notes to the right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, again, thank you, Harvey, for the introduction. I'm busier in retirement than I think I ever was when I was working, because they define time when you're working, but when you're volunteering, which is what we should be doing at this stage of our life, if we've been blessed enough to not have to move in with the kids, we should be getting out there and doing things for other people. This was a tough talk to put together a couple of years ago. I did it for a homesteading group, actually, because you'll see from as we go through it, there's probably about 3 or 4 talks that could be given an hour in length anyway for different concepts. So as a result of that, I created a resource sheet very similar to the resources that are available on Nature in My Backyard website that first off on the left-hand side there, it gives you a brief bullet point of the topics that I'm going to cover here this afternoon, and then followed by categories of information, and then some links that I think have been very helpful in putting this together, and that you might find helpful if you say, geez, he talked about, getting some wildflowers started and about starting them in a spot where there's never been a garden before. Well, you can go to the links and there's actually videos and other things to show you there. So what makes a good bug or a bad bug? I think bugs just are. And if you go back 400 years ago, before we were very populous in this country, the insects were kind of in a pretty good balance with each other. There were things that ate plants and things that ate the things that ate plants. And it all worked out. A lot of native plants and a lot of native insects. But things have changed quite a bit. When I was a kid, this is what windshields look like in the summertime when you went past a natural area. My dad would teach us words that my mom didn't want us to learn when he would see this happen. And boy, was it a mess cleaning it up. But I got to tell you, we went to Hilton Head last year. We drove down to Hilton Head Island for a vacation with our kids, and we did not have to wash the windshield once from Cleveland to South Carolina. And that was sort of very telling to me that things aren't the same 400 years later. We've done a lot of things. We've changed a lot of things in the country. Some of them because it all good, but unintended consequences. Our forests are not as extensive. We have a lot of plants and animals in this country that do not belong here. They came here either purposefully or accidentally, and they become invasive. And that being said, we in this country have shipped our products and our pests not intentionally, but accidentally to other parts of the world too. So this is a global problem and it's a biodiversity problem. So I'm going to talk about good bug, bad bug, and how to enhance the good bugs in our yards. And when we do this, we're going to be benefiting biodiversity because as you hopefully will get a sense when this is all over, everything is inextricably tied together. So the message here, we're going to be increasing biodiversity for beneficial insects using native plants. We'll get into the details of that. You encourage the good plants, the good bugs. They need certain resources. We'll talk about what those resources are in order for them to do their jobs. And they will manage the bad bugs because there will be lots of them. And the ones that manage the bad bugs are what we call predators and parasitoids. And you'll learn more about parasitoids as we go along. You're going to be improving biodiversity in the process. And as Steve Kagan would say, it will be beautiful because native plants of all kinds, whether you're talking about trees, shrubs, flowers, they can be just as beautiful as the non-native plants in there. So here's a quick outline. I'm going to show you what good bug habitat looks like. What are the resources that you need to provide for them to thrive? I'm going to meet some of the good bugs and the bad bugs. I'm going to emphasize some of those. I'm going to talk about the concept of integrated pest management. And while we'll be directing that towards insects, you could also talk about this in terms of plant diseases. That's considered a pest. And then finally, briefly, go through how to create some good bug habitat in your backyards. So I've drawn lots of images from the internet because, quite frankly, I didn't have personal images, but the image on the left looks like good bug habitat. And what does that mean? If you look down in the lower left down here, I think you see my cursor there? You've got some grasses. And while these plants that I'm showing you, some of them are native, some of them are not, but just think about the concept in general here. You could have native grasses, native forbs. Those are non-woody plants, perennials, we call them. Lots of things, and you could see some of them in here. And then you see shrubs and trees of different kinds, conifers, deciduous, of different heights. They're layered in there. The image on the right shows some nice liatris and some monarda, beautiful plants, native plants, draw insects, and really help out. So this is the kind of habitat that the good bugs are looking for. They want pollen, they want nectar, they want a place to put their eggs so that they can develop, and then they want food for their larvae to consume while they're developing too. Other images, I put these up because your yard, you may have a yard that you can make look like these. These are quite extensive plantings, but you may also have a very simple yard, and it really doesn't matter how big the installation is of native plants. You could just put two or three plants here and there, add a tree, whatever. To the extent that you do that, you are benefiting biodiversity using native plants. Okay, so some of these you can get fancy with. And I like to talk a lot about trees because our pollinators, the insects that come out early in the spring, in the March and in April, they're looking for sources of pollen and nectar. These are the good bugs. And where they're going to find it frequently is with the flowering trees, like this red bud, for example. Red bud is a native that comes in a lot of varieties. You can get different colors. Some of their foliage is beautiful in the fall. Others are just green, different color flowers and things like that. And you get the idea here also of layering. So in the background, you see some of those tall trees that leave the image. In the foreground, you see the lower vegetation. This is good for bugs. This is good for birds. This is good for all kinds of animals because they need places to hide, things to eat, and so on. I've often heard it said, if you only do one thing, plant a native tree. Well, the native tree that I would suggest planting would be any kind of a crabapple. And there are so many varieties. Ohio State University's Seacrest Arboretum has a whole section they call Crablandia. And the research that's ongoing, these trees come in, the maximum heights will be very tall or very short. Their colors are just all over the rainbow. Their foliage colors change dramatically, but all of them have flowers in the spring for the pollinators and the birds that will eat those insects. And then they provide apples, crab apples, that go all into the winter, throughout the winter, that feed the birds and other animals. So lots of things happen with a flowering tree. They're feeding a lot of different organisms. You may say, well, I live in town. I don't have much space. And this is an idea here of a small cottage that they maximize their yard. They got rid of the lawn so you didn't have to mow it, and they put lots of things in. Now, someone pointed out too that, well, in my municipality, they don't allow you to plant between the sidewalk and the curb. Okay, so they don't. But this is just giving you ideas again. Another great habitat for good bugs is rain gardens. And you've got a low spot, and you can see this image on the left. Here's the drain pipe over here. This is a newly planted rain garden. It's selected the plants that will tolerate periodic drenching, and then be able to still be alive when everything finally percolates through the soil. Initially, when you plant a rain garden like this, you have to sort of babysit it, make sure it gets enough moisture the first year so that the plant's set. There's some management. But the image on the right, it's not the same garden, but this is a mature rain garden. And they really take care of themselves. This is the beauty of native perennial flowers. They have deep roots. And right now, even in my own vegetable garden, I started adding native perennials years ago, since the kids stopped taking so many vegetables and I have a lot of beds. Well, those perennials in this really relative drought that we've had the last couple of weeks are doing fabulous, but I have to hit water on all of my other vegetables every day or every other day in order to keep them going. So perennials are not too much of a problem afterwards. So you see some ideas here of what habitat looks like. It's beautiful. It's trees, it's shrubs, it's native flowers. Uh, there's millions, literally millions of species of insects around the world, and only about 11,000 species of birds. So I know a heck of a lot more about birds because there's fewer of them than I do about bugs. But I do love them. Um, Only about 1%, according to the experts, are considered pests. But of course, 1% of millions is still a lot of individuals out there. But the other 99% are beneficial insects. And they come into the categories of pollinators. You all know what that is. Decomposers. I love to talk about decomposers because it grosses people out, and that's just a strange side of me. I come from a family of five boys, and we were nothing if we weren't, uh, you know, sort of disgusting most of the time. But decomposers are a major beneficial insect. And then we've got, and you saw this earlier, predators and parasitoids. These are insects that eat other insects or lay their eggs in other insects, and they develop, and in the process of development, they consume that other insect, uh, basically getting it out of the gene pool, if you will. So let's take a look and see what some of these look like. Pollinators can be insects from many, many different groups. You see pictures here. I'm not going to get into tremendous detail, but butterflies on common milkweed. Here's a fritillary on what do you call it? Uh, oh, somebody help me out here. It's escaping me. Um, Anyway, butterflies, we got wasps on solidago here, goldenrod, butterflies on flowers. We have beetles, we have flies, we have wasps. These are all pollinators because in the process of gathering nectar or pollen, they are carrying pollen from one plant to another. Okay. And then bees. Bees are a huge group. They are so beneficial. And really, most of us don't know a lot about them. Yeah, we know about the honeybee because everybody knows about honeybees. But honeybees are actually not native to this country, but they're very important to agriculture. They're an agricultural commodity. And we probably know, most people probably know what a bumblebee looks like and all, but how about these other bees? These are all tiny, solitary bees that don't bother people at all. And yet they go about the business of pollinating flowers on trees and on other kinds of plants. Some of them make their homes in the ground, like here on the far right, bottom corner. This is a mining bee, and it's in April. It makes its nest on an open clay area. This was from Veterans Legacy Woods in Geauga County. There was a whole hillside of activity on a warm April day in early April. Um, that's a key to us to say, oh, they need some open space too. So in your gardens, you don't have to cover everything with mulch. You can leave some bare spots, and believe me, the bees will take advantage of it. Um, Certain plants are bee attractors. I have boneset in my garden almost by accident. I took a couple of stems of it that we were weeding the phenology gardens at the Master Gardener headquarters in Burton, and these sort of got out of where they belonged. And it's a cultured garden, so it's not a wild garden. So I took them home, put them in a pot with some soil and some non-soil mix and things, and that pot filled up in 1 year. And I took that pot and I divided it into four pieces, just cut them with my shovel and planted them. It's an incredible native plant that attracts metallic sweat bees like crazy. So this is in the heat of the summer. You'll just find scores of them on this plant. Some other beneficial insects are flies. You don't much think about flies, but we talked about them. We're going to talk about them as decomposers again too. But these are three bee flies. They sort of remind you of bees, but they're flies. They only have two wings, and it's a hunchback bee fly on the left, a tiger bee fly in the middle, and a greater bee fly on the right. Look at the greater bee fly just above my cursor, and you can see one of its long legs full of pollen from this trout lily. So this is early season. Again, we're back into April here. And these bees are very active, or these flies are very active, going from flower to flower, getting nectar and so on. Other pollinators, bristle flies. This is on rattlesnake master, a great flower. This is a feather-legged fly. And when you start taking pictures of these things and identifying, you go, "Oh my gosh, it's almost endless how many different cool individuals that we have here." And this is a European drone fly. There are several species of hover flies. These two are the one on the left is a long calligrapher fly, it's called, and the one on the right is a margined calligrapher fly. And so they're really they're amazing. You can sometimes see them in the woods where they're just sort of buzzing in front of you. And if you put your hand out, sometimes they'll come and land on your hand. Um, the bottle brush buckeye is a great shrub, flowering shrub that attracts lots of insects. And this fly on here is called a thick-legged hoverfly. Obvious name. You can see how thick the legs are in here. So on. So lots of different types of pollinators here. Now the predator and parasitoids. These are some of my favorite because again, you start getting into the nitty gritty of things. On the left on this daisy is an ambush bug. If you get a real close up of them, they're an armored looking, prehistoric looking thing. They just hang out on flowers, waiting for another insect to come, and then they grab them. That's how they do it. I'm going to come back to the guy in the middle here, but you know about lady beetles, especially their larvae. They like to eat lots of soft-bodied insects like these aphids. Here's your woolly aphids on a tree. Down below them is a small mantid. It's eating an aphid. You can see right here. That's a little green aphid. Wasps eat all kinds of insects. They're looking for protein to feed their larvae as well. And one that we don't often think about, but just started emerging last night or night before last here out here in Geauga County where I live, the lightning bug. Okay, and this is the larva of the lightning bug, which lives in the leaf litter in the woods. And when they're there, they are a voracious predator of all kinds of insects their size or smaller. Looking a little closer at the lady beetles, there's tons of lady beetles, all different kinds of colors and configurations of spots and so on, some without spots. But its larva there on the left is another really aggressive looking predator, and it's doing its job of eating an aphid. Internet pictures here. I do a lot of bird photography and I take credit for my stuff, but most of what you're seeing here is stuff that's generally available out there. Some more insect predators, a robber fly up here on the top left, and eating a mosquito. So if you say, oh, yay, you like robber flies, dragonflies will eat almost anything, including other dragonflies. But it's consuming something here. Down below is a yellow jacket that's working on a fly. Now, I don't know if that fly, if it killed that fly or if the fly was dead and it's just taking advantage. And while not an insect, it's an arachnid, spiders play a big role in controlling insect populations as well through their webs or just through their hunting. Some like this one, just hunting down this caterpillar here. I'm spending a lot of time on beneficials, showing you pictures because I want you to see there's so many cool things. The more different kinds of native plants you have, the more these different insects you're going to have, and the better job you're going to have of controlling the bad bugs. So midges are little flies. They're really tiny. And you can see by the size of the aphids in this picture on the right and the midge larva, they're pretty aggressive. Lacewings are a pretty little insect, very delicate looking, but oh man, their larva, again, look at the sickle-like mouth parts on here. They grab a hold of stuff and hold it while they're chewing them up in there. And even those cute little hoverflies, their larvae are also predators. Most of the caterpillars are consuming plant material, but some of them consume other animals as well. And then a little guy called the minute pirate bug. Both the adult and the larval forms are responsible for eating lots of little soft-bodied insects like aphids. So, what's a bug? We talk about bugs being a general term, just like we talk about Kleenex being the name for tissues. But a true bug is a bug whose mouth parts are specialized for piercing tissue or animals, and then consuming, siphoning out the contents through that piercing, sucking mouth parts. Some of them, like the aphids. So here's a bug eating a bug. The aphid is a bug that eats the plant juices, pierces the plant and sucks juices out. And the minute pirate bug is a true bug that pierces the aphid and consumes its contents. Okay, parasitoids. I want to talk a little bit about those. They are mostly wasps that lay their eggs in caterpillars or pupa or other insects. And so in the top left is a hornworm. Could have been a tomato hornworm or tobacco hornworm, but a little wasp, like the ones you see in the other three images, laid its eggs in the hornworm. Those eggs hatched inside of the organism and consumed part of it, but how in the world nature knows not to consume the critical components to keep the thing alive. And then when it came time to pupate, they pupate on the outside of the hornworm. So if you ever come across one of these in your tomato patch or somewhere else, um, first off, you want to get them out of there so that the hornworm doesn't eat more of your tomato plant, but then put them somewhere so that the larva can continue to develop and hatch into more wasps that will be beneficial. But you see other images of the wasp injecting their eggs through their ovipositor. That's what their stinger is called. These things, by the way, are not aggressive to people. They've got stingers, but that's how they have to insert their eggs. Some of them insert eggs right into hard wood. It's amazing. But these guys are little, and they're using it into caterpillars or right into a pupa here. It's hard to get video in nature. People always want video, but this is a really cool insect I came across a few years back. It's a great golden digger wasp, and I saw it on a flower first and identified it. But then my wife was riding her horse, and I was videotaping her. And she was practicing and wanted some video, and I see this coming down here on the ground in the sandy soil. This wasp digs channels in the sand, makes little brood chambers off of that main channel. Then it flies away, finds a grasshopper or a cricket or a stink bug. There's something good, stink bugs, paralyzes it by stinging it, brings it back, puts it into one of those brood chambers, lays an egg on top of it, and then packs the sand back in around there. And sometime later, the egg will hatch. The larva will have the grasshopper or the cricket or the stink bug as a meal. We'll consume it, and next year it will come out and be an adult great golden digger wasp. So, really cool life cycle. You don't often get to see these kinds of things. So, other predators of insects include birds. We all know that. Birds. This is where this whole thing gets inextricably tied together. Birds need soft-bodied caterpillars to feed their babies because it's hard to find protein sources and moisture together. They can't bring water to their babies. This doesn't work that way unless it's a duck, but ducks are really precocious and they typically hatch and they're out swimming around right away. But other songbirds are in the nest. The parents go out and catch caterpillars, and those caterpillars mostly are on the leaves of trees or other plants in the habitat. And they bring them back, and the caterpillar takes carbohydrates of the plant and converts them to protein. The bird takes that protein and the moisture inside, feeds it to its baby, and the baby converts that to animal protein and grows and develops. Whether it's an adult insect as the birds get a little bigger or the soft ones, it's just amazing. But birds eat tons of caterpillars. One little factoid, and I think if you've read Doug Tallamy's books, he talks about this, that it takes between 6,000 and 9,000 caterpillars to develop one clutch of baby chickadees to get them to adulthood. 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars. And they do that within 50 to 100 yards of their nest site. And you know how many chickadees you've got in the forest and things like this. And then these other birds, the juncos and the towhees, and the blue-wing warblers in the pictures, they're doing the same kind of things with similar kind of numbers. So there's a bazillion caterpillars in the canopies of our trees. Going back to why, if you only did one thing, plant a native tree, the flowers, the insects that eat on them, the fruits and the seeds and the nuts that develop from them, huge contributions to the environment. Other things that will eat insects at different stages of life, you can see them all here, possums and amphibians and bats and skunks. They'll eat larvae, they'll eat adults, all kinds of things, and certainly reptiles. We don't have as many of these in our area, but we have some snakes. If you go a little further south, you start getting into some of these other amphibians, and they're really, I mean, reptiles, and they're really kind of cool, especially down in the deep south states. So those are beneficial insects and predators of bad insects. So let's meet some of this 1% that causes us a lot of grief. So here's some images, and some of these are mine, finally. The one in the top left is a flea beetle, and it's the bane of my eggplant culture. I cannot grow eggplants to save my soul because I never see flea beetles until I grab an eggplant, put it in the ground, and 5 or 6 days later, it's just riddled with marks from the flea beetle. So my strategy, and we'll talk about strategies and integrated pest management, is to not plant eggplants in the garden. I just can't get away from them. The other one is this striped cucumber beetle. If you go a little further south, we have the spotted cucumber beetle as well. And while they don't cause much problems by themselves, they carry a bacteria that when they chew into the plant and introduce the bacteria, it will cause a whole cucumber plant to just wilt overnight. And it'll come back a day or two, but ultimately, once it starts it, it's done. The bacterial wilt is just terrible on them. These cause us a lot of problems in vegetable, but we can do something about them to some extent. We can talk about that a little bit later. Aphids come in all kinds of colors, which is really cool. There's black ones and red ones and orange ones and yellow ones. They can actually be washed off of a lot of plants, but it's good to have the predator insects eating a lot of them. Just below them is the cross-striped cabbage moth larva. And this is another one that causes me grief when I'm growing broccoli or kale. I don't grow cabbage so much, but it would do that too, and collards. So it's the larva of a night flying moth. And people don't realize how many moths are out there. Most of these caterpillars, the birds were feeding their babies, are from moths that fly at night and lay their eggs on the leaves of the trees at night. And they do the same thing in your vegetable garden. They come in there and they lay their eggs and they develop rapidly. There's a lot of eggs. So one of the strategies we have for this is you put a whole planting of things that do not need pollination, like broccoli and kale. You put them in one spot and you cover it with insect netting. I'll show you an example of that a little bit later in here. And you got to do that from the very beginning so that the insects cannot get to those plants and lay their eggs early on. But anyway, that's a pest. We have bean beetles here, both the adult and the larval form down in the middle. And who doesn't know the Japanese beetle? We have native pests and we have introduced pests. So the Japanese beetle certainly is an introduced pest. Some more termed ones we call bad bugs. You saw the hornworm that was loaded with larvae over there earlier, or pupae, I'm sorry. Here's another picture of one chewing on a tomato. You have the larva of the Mexican bean beetle, which really can ravage bean plants. Knock on wood, I haven't had that problem yet. Squash bugs, if you grow pumpkins or squashes of different kinds, butternut squash, acorn squash, zucchinis, you may get the squash bugs laying their eggs on there. And these guys, they go to adulthood. Complete metamorphosis is like an insect lays an egg, the egg develops into a larva, the larva pupates, and then it comes out and looking totally different than it did. Well, these little squash bugs, they are baby squash bugs, and they keep growing. We call them instars. Each stage, they shed their exoskeleton as they get bigger and bigger and bigger, and you could have hundreds and hundreds of them on your plants. There's a strategy I'll talk about for minimizing that. Below them, an insect that I love to hate is the squash vine borer. Its moth is beautiful. It's red and black, and you flipping around, you say, "Oh, what is that?" You like to catch it, add it to your moth collection, but it lays its egg on the base of zucchini plants. And when the egg hatches, the larva chews its way inside and it lives inside the stem of your zucchini plant, which is okay for a while, but the more it excavates the inside, the more damage it does. But you can cut it out of there. So that's another nasty. Wire worms, these are the larvae of click beetles, and they can be a real pain for new plants, the roots of new plants, or actually acting like cutworms, cutting down the new sprouts that they come up. And lygus bugs. Lygus bugs are the bane of commercial agriculture as well. And when I took this picture, I didn't notice initially, but look down here in the lower left corner. That's a tiny fly. These things sometimes are really, really minute. The smallest thing I've seen, though, I was working on the help desk on Monday and brought in a sample of a phlox plant that it was having problems, and I knew what the problem was, but there was a new master gardener, and I was helping to train him. And I said, "I'd like you to look at this." And we put it under the microscope and magnified it about 10 times. And it was spider mites, and they were active. And you could not see them with your naked eye. You could look at it closely all you want, but you had to magnify it, and they were just decimating my plants. So we'll talk about that a little more later as well. I keep talking about we'll talk about more later, but that's because I know what's coming ahead. A few more things here. We'll start moving up a little faster. Four-line plant bugs in the top left, cabbage loopers, cutworms, earwigs, grasshoppers, and even asparagus beetles. So there's no shortage of things. Beauty and the Beast is, I like to call this one, because if you love swallowtail butterflies, you have to appreciate the fact that in their larval stage, they like to eat things like fennel and parsley from your garden. So I actually remember the first time I spotted one of these, and it decimated my fennel. Wound up taking it to Geauga Parks, and they have a little place where they actually grow fennel and parsley for these things to eat, so they can develop. The sphinx moth is your caterpillar here from the hornworm caterpillar. The beautiful little white moths that the kids chase around in the yard is your cabbage moth. And then back again to my cross-striped um, cabbage worm here. Its moth is very nondescript. If you saw this out in the woods, you'd be neutral about this. So, well, it's a moth, okay. But when you see the caterpillars, they're pretty nasty. So, okay, now you've seen a lot of bugs. What are we going to do about the 1% that are bugging us? Well, as we say in Master Gardener, we have options, okay? Because we don't tell anybody what to do. We sort of present the options and then we leave it up to you. And these options come under the umbrella of something called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, we call it. And there is actually an Ohio Line fact sheet about this. We learn to use these all the time. And what it is, it's an approach to controlling pests. Now, pests could be animals or diseases. So each of them is a pest. And I bring that up because there's a resource I'm going to show you that is really good that talks about both of those things. So it's an approach to controlling pests that gives you a variety of things to do, a lot of more tools in your tool chest. First off, you have to have scientific knowledge about the pest and also about the plant that is giving you problems in this particular case. You start with the option that causes the least amount of risk to the environment. So what would that be like? An example is, well, grab the Japanese beetle and knock them into a container full of soapy water. That's the least risky thing that you can do for the environment, and it's easy and all this other stuff. But when push comes to shove and it doesn't work and things are really out of hand, it does consider pesticides if it's warranted. So, and we'll talk about that too. So, what kind of practices? Cultural practices. Remember, I talked about my flea beetle, removed the food source. I realized that I can't get away from flea beetles. Maybe somebody's out there going to give me some source of help on that. I don't know. So I just stopped growing the things that are, naturally going to be attacked in my area. When to plant. There are insects that are here in the spring that aren't here in the late summer and fall. So if you have enough time, maybe you're going to plant instead of having a spring planting of something, just plan to put it in the garden or plant the seeds later in the summer when the insect pest is not around anymore or is in fewer numbers. So that's one thing. Watering strategies. Wet plants. Wet plants are subject to fungal diseases like crazy, and I'll show you an example of that. So we want to water at early in the morning so the plants have time to dry if you're planting overhead, or water at the base of the plant. Removing old plant material. Now, this is in your vegetable garden. If you're in your vegetable garden, you got to get rid of that old plant material because it harbors our pests. If you have a perennial flower bed, you want to leave some of that plant material because that's where the good bugs will put their larvae. So cultural practices is one thing. There's also mechanical things you can do, like I said, knocking the Japanese beetles into soapy water. Insect netting is on there. If you put new plantings in and you have cutworms, you can actually make little round tubes out of cardboard and put them around the plant to keep the cutworm from getting to your plant in there. You can use natural predators like a bacteria called Bacillus thuringiensis. I can never pronounce it fully, but this is an interesting thing because it stays put where you have it. You can buy a lot of insects online too, natural insects, but if you release the insects into your garden area, they could fly away, and whatever you paid for them flies away with it. All your money goes away. And then finally, there's chemical. There's natural chemicals and synthetic chemicals that we have out there. And I know people don't like to talk about pesticides, but they really do have a place when used properly. But keep in mind, please, natural insecticides kill insects. Synthetic insecticides kill insects. It doesn't matter when the mosquito fogging company tells you we use a natural insecticide to get rid of the mosquitoes. When they spray, when they fog the area, fortunately, the active ingredient doesn't last very long, but whatever comes in contact with it, even though this chemical came from a natural source, like chrysanthemums or something, it kills any insect, including our night flying moths that are so critical to laying eggs on the trees for the birds to get the caterpillars. So, a pesticide is a pesticide. And then finally, the last point I want to make, and this is in the handout for emphasis, you don't have to worry about remembering these. There's a group of chemicals called neonicotinoids, and they are systemic chemicals that are taken up in the plant itself so that when any insect eats any part of the plant, the insect will die. Now, these are used widely in commercial agriculture. It's complicated by the fact that we are feeding a hungry world, and sometimes we can't get away from some of this stuff, but we definitely don't want these in our home landscapes and definitely not in our vegetable gardens. So, okay, let's go back and say, where do we start with all this? We got an insect pest. First thing you got to do is identify what the pest is. And we're talking about insects here now. And we need to know what the plant is, and we need to know what life stage both the insect and the plant are in. And for this, you can go to websites and you can find information. You can also use apps on your phone. So the picture we have here is of a Colorado potato beetle on the left, and it's in the adult stage. So we do some research on that, and these others are caterpillars or aphids. So how we do that is we go to a website and we type in something about like controlling Colorado potato beetles, and then we end that with .edu or the word extension, like the extension service. Master gardeners are part of the extension service. And then you will come up with a list of things, a list of optional websites, and you look at it, and you want to look at the ones that end in .edu or .org, because they're not trying to sell you something. They're trying to tell you something about information that is scientifically validated. The apps you see on the left here, I have Seek. It's an iNaturalist app that's free for your phone, and they don't bother you with emails and all this other stuff. And iNaturalist itself. I have both of these apps on my phone, and both of them will help you identify any living thing, plants or animals. So that's really kind of cool. And then if you have a picture, you could post it on a website called Bug Guide, and it'll help you understand what that is. So we're going to learn about the insect and the control methods from these websites. Here's an example, Japanese beetles in the home garden, how to deal with Japanese beetles. One of these is from Penn State University Extension. The other's from University of Wisconsin Extension Office. So you can hang your hat on those. And some of these links are in that handout that I have available too, which you'll learn about here at the end of the talk. Another one, and I came across this last year, Virginia Co-op Extension. This is a 300-page document that's free to download online. And it's got a lot of information in it about all kinds of things, but it's broken into chapters. So you can actually just download the chapter that's of interest to you, and you can see them right there. You're talking about fruit or ornamentals or vegetables. I chose the vegetable one here as an example, and when I clicked on it, these are the insects that bother vegetables, and the vegetables are listed, the common vegetables in Virginia, which are just like ours, that are listed in alphabetical order, and the insect that is troublesome to it. And you'll see like asparagus there, it says asparagus beetle, and go to table 2.2.1. And so if you page through this, flipping through it, if you had a paper copy, you go to that and it shows you a picture of the asparagus beetle, what it looks like. And it's a really attractive beetle, unless you're growing asparagus, and there's a lot of them on it. But it tells you about the beetle, how to control it, different methods, and even chemicals to use. So if you have to go to that, there's chemical controls. Some of them are organic, some of them are not. But so you're going down the list and you say, well, the cultural things, I've tried all that, that's not working. I have to go to chemicals. When you go to chemicals, the one thing we always say is read and follow label instructions. Any chemical, whether you're doing it household cleaners or you're using chemicals, out in your yard that you're trying to kill something with, read and follow the label that's on there. The label is the law, but it will tell you. So these are organic controls for insects, but you want to say, okay, you can use a product that maybe is very effective for aphids, but you got to watch out that it also kills beetles and maybe bees or something else. So this resource has a ton of information in it. Okay, so we talking about all this stuff. Let's go into the garden and take a look at what some of these practices look like. So we talk about cultural things that you can do. There's some good examples here in my garden and some bad examples. The tomatoes are a bad example. So this was many years ago before I went to Master Gardener School and learned better. I had tomato plants and I was going to plant them together and have tons and tons of tomatoes. So in this one bed, which is only about 16 feet long by 4 feet wide, I have 8 tomato plants, maybe more. I can count 2, 4, 6, 8 stakes, 9 in the background, 9 or 10 tomatoes. That's about 5 or 6 too many. Why is that? Because when these things get wet from dew or from rain, their foliage is too tight together to evaporate quickly. So fungus tends to grow. And if you can see the bottom of these plants, the leaves are already coming off. It can get blight, it can get fusarium or verticillium wilt, all sorts of things. So when you're planting tomatoes, You want to give them 3, even 4 feet for a large tomato plant, the big boys and things like that. Give them 3 or 4 feet of space in all directions so that the wind can pass through and help evaporate the moisture out. I learned to regret this one. Okay, over here I've got a square foot garden. This is a concept you can read about square foot gardening online. I have lots of different things in there, including cucumbers at the other end. So cucumbers are susceptible to ground crawling beetles like the striped cucumber beetle. And one of the techniques you can use is to get them to go vertical. So I read about this in the square foot gardening manual. I built a trellis and we wove it in here with just string, and the cucumbers are growing up the trellis so they don't have to lay on the ground. A bigger and heftier system is behind them there. If you can see in the background here, these are squash plants. There's acorn squash and butternut squash. And both of those fruits are very heavy. And so I built a structure out of them, if you've ever gone by a construction site and you've seen the orange plastic netting around things, I found some of that in the trash and I stretched it up between some steel poles and I guided these plants up there because I didn't want all those squash beetles on my plants that are all over the ground. So I got rid of that problem and also lets air circulate around so you don't have diseases growing in there. So these are some of the cultural types of things that you can do. Mechanically, you can collect things. My son had an aphid problem. He lives in Illinois. Aphids are usually beneficial, but they decimated everything in the yard. He put soy sauce and vegetable oil in a container and buried it in at the ground level. Hundreds of aphids went into it every night. He still had a huge problem. There were thousands of these things. I talked about the cutworms. You can put little like the paper center of a roll of toilet paper. That's what this is basically. And you put it into the ground an inch or so, and the plant grows up around it and avoids the cutworms. Everybody knows about beer for slugs, burying beer, hand picking. Here's my favorite though, is the insect netting. These are collards. This is a wonderful crop of collards. It's the first time I grew it, which is why it came out good, and I haven't been able to grow them quite as nicely ever since. But you can see the mesh against my hand here. It's very small, and yet it's open enough that it allows for evaporation from rain and it allows you to water through the insect netting. So you don't have to take the netting off until it's time to harvest. And then there's these sticky traps. Just remember that everything, good bugs and bad bugs, go onto the sticky trap. So I would be cautious about that. Chemicals, there's no shortage of them about them. Uh, Ones that are natural or people talk a lot about are insecticidal soaps and horticultural oils like neem oil. Please read about them. There's links in the resources. They are good, but they have limitations too. You want to read about them when you can. And again, I'm going to re-emphasize this on purpose, second time. Stay away from neonicotinoids. They are inside of your plants if you buy ready grown plants for it. Um, Biological tools, we talked about them. These are the insects that are going to, the good insects, the predators and the parasitoids that are going to help try to control your insect populations. So let's go on here. Our goal now is to get some permanent plantings in place, shrubs, grasses, all the flowers and all that. And we want to make sure that it looks beautiful. Okay, that was the question that was asked. And yes, it will be. So getting ready. You're going to make a plan that you're going to work. Now, whether that plan is I'm just going to plant one tree, I'm going to buy a few native plants and put them in existing garden beds. That's the easiest things that you can do. Or I'm going to take a section of lawn, I'm going to get rid of the lawn, and I want to do a whole butterfly garden over there. Whatever you do, you want to plan your work. Decide where you're going to put things. And this is where the master gardeners who work with nature in my backyard can be incredibly helpful to you. For a small donation to help cover some of their expenses, two professionals will come to you, to your garden on your invitation, and look at your yard with you. They'll get to know you, what you want, what you're interested in here. They will help identify any non-native invasive plants that are there. And then they'll ask you, what do you want to do with this? Well, I just want to add a little bit of this, that, or I want to do something more grandiose. They will help you look at the site. The site conditions, do you have a lot of sun? Do you have too much shade? What's your soil moisture like? Do you have a southerly exposure? All these kinds of things that you want to consider before you ever pick the plants out that are going to do there. They'll help you do that, and they'll help put together a plan for you. Excuse me, they won't do the work. Um, Take a little sip here. They won't do the work for you, but they'll help you do the planning. And that's the critical part. Okay. And then you decide what plants to add once you decide what you want to do. So again, you can go to Nature in My Backyard and register to have some of them come out and help you put that plan together. Okay, what's next? Where are you going to plant? This is actually a shade garden on the left. If you can see all the beautiful plants that you can have in a shade garden. This is overhead, there's overhead canopy quite a bit. And this is my front yard with a southern exposure. The front of the house faces directly south, and I have septic system. So I have to have lawn, which is my evaporation beds in there. That limits what I can do. All of our flowers are on the north side of the house, on the other side of the house. So I've limited to shrubs and a few hardy trees in the front yard and the requisite grass, which again, I have to have because of the septic. So if you have a low spot in your yard, this is a great place for a rain garden. We talked about this earlier. You can take care of, you can put the plants in there, babysit them initially, get them started, and then they'll take care of themselves in year 2, 3, and 4. Um, this is the resource I mentioned a minute ago, Nature in My Backyard ohionativeplants.org. You can get a lot of resources for doing this at this website, and you can register your garden to have a visit being made too. If you go to the website, you look under resources here and a drop down resources to download. It's pretty much the same as what I gave you, what my handout is, which is a list of links, valuable links that you can go to. So if you go to resources to download, you look at it, you're going to find this list and you click on any one of these, and it's going to give you a list of links that look something like this. So and these have been carefully curated by Jane Ellison and others to make sure that they're sending you to the right places and giving you the right kind of information. So you can pretty much count on what's going to be there. Okay, you want to get if you're going to put some things in your yard, you want a site preparation. Again, we remove the non-native plants first. If you want to remove some lawn, you're going to, and this is brief. There's all these handouts the handouts will talk to you about it, the links, but you need to remove your lawn down to 2 or 3 inches, and you can remove that with equipment. Other options are you can just mow the lawn down to the nub, if you will, put cardboard on it, and then either smother it over time or actually put plastic on it to kill the lawn. You need to get rid of the grass because the grass and the non-native invasive plants are competitors for your native plants. That's why you're going through all this site preparation. Don't spend the money if you're not going to do the homework first. Why all the fuss about non-native invasives? We keep talking about this. They did not evolve with the insects and the diseases in our area. So there's no natural controls, no insects or disease that are problematic to them. They leaf out sooner and they keep their leaves longer, which gives them a competitive photosynthetic advantage. They can photosynthesize and develop very fast that way. It's also their Achilles heel because people like me that like to kill buckthorn, I have acres of buckthorn I'm constantly working on in different places in our Audubon sanctuaries. I can get to spraying that herbicide on their leaves earlier in the season before the other desirable plants start coming up. And when the desirable flowers have gone to sleep in the fall, these invasives still have leaves, photosynthesizing leaves, and I can spray them then and try to kill them as well. So what's an advantage for one thing can be their disadvantage as well. Anyway, they can take over an area and they reduce biodiversity overall. Preparing your site, digging out the grass, pulling up old trees, smothering with cardboard or herbicide. These are some of the tools that you can use depending on the extent to which you're working. I think most of us will be doing small plots to start with. These are preparing sites where you're trying to kill the grass with plastic. There's 2 different techniques, and clear plastic actually works faster than the black plastic does. But that's solarization versus occultation, which is blocking light. interesting things there. So this is where you're preparing the site. This is replacing a lawn. This is my backyard. It's my vegetable garden. I sprayed it with herbicide to kill most of the yard was weeds. That's why I did this. It wasn't that I was killing grass. I was killing mostly weeds. And you can see all my protective equipment over here on the left. And I've read and followed the label instructions. I know what I have to wear. Um, this is my vegetable garden right next to where I killed the grass. How did I do that? I put a piece of cardboard between the grass and up against the vegetable garden beds, and I sprayed up against there so the herbicide did not get into the plants. I will also make the point here that there's a lot of misinformation out here about some herbicides like glyphosate. This lawn was dead, and I planted grass seed on top of it, and 2 weeks later I had lawn. So if the glyphosate really does stay in the soil forever, why did my grass grow? Something to think about here anyway. So you can obliterate an area like that and then plant on top of it. You may need to amend your soils a little bit before you do that with compost. You can buy or sell it. Get a soil test if you're going to be working in right directly in your soil. If you're not going to be making an artificial bed with mulch or something else, get a soil sample. Know what the positives and the negatives of your soil are, so you amend it correctly. To till or not to till, let's just say that there's a place for both of them. When you do till things up, you stir up the weed seed bed and things can sprout, but some of the compacted soils need to be tilled and worked. So just be aware of the pluses and the minuses. And again, this is in the resource sheets as well. One quick approach towards, especially if you're going to be doing seeds, you're going to plant a native garden of flowers out of seeds, is you mow the site low, you cover it with cardboard on here, and then you take something called aged double shredded hardwood mulch. It's like the mulch that you would put down this year if you just kept it under a tarp, and I did this under a tarp for the whole summer, and next spring, that would be incredibly well rotted. It almost looks like soil. And you put about 3 inches of it on top of the cardboard or the paper here, and then you can plant directly into the mulch because there's no weed seeds in the mulch. And I've resourced here, Ohio Prairie Nursery has a link for how to do this here. Um, if you're going to if you're going to be doing seeds, several of the places have seeds available in different mixes, bee friendly, wildflower, grasses, all these sorts of things. You can look at their websites for different types of situations in there. They're really not very expensive. This is one website. It was $16 for enough seed to cover 250 square feet, which is what, like 15 by 15. That's a pretty nice little garden. So you can do it economically. Some people want to put seed right on the snow. They've prepared the soil underneath, so they disperse all this seed in the wintertime. That's a little iffy because in order for the seed to take root, it has to make contact with the soil. So I think we've tried this with different things with our master gardener group. We did not have good success, so we go back to planting the seed on a nice bed somehow or another so the seed makes contact with the substrate. If you're going to be planting from seed in your first year that the stuff is growing, you're going to be cutting it when it's about 8 inches tall. And you're going to do this like with a weed whacker. So this is a big area that the person's looking at. You're either going to mow it to 4 inches or you're going to weed whack it to 4 inches in the first year. You don't want the plant putting its valuable metabolic resources into putting out flowers that first year. You want it into putting roots down and establishing itself. And then the second year you can let them grow and they'll be a beautiful area. You can start your own seeds in milk jugs. There's tons of things online for how to do this. Plant them in the winter. You just want to make sure you drill holes in the bottom so that the water comes out of them. But you can start your own plants or you can go purchase plants. And this is probably the fastest way and where most of us are probably going to be with our plantings. We're going to go to a reputable nursery with good stock that doesn't have diseases on it, and we're going to pick up plants and put them in our yards, whether we're putting them into a new double shredded mulch bed or we're putting them into soil. You can do that. There's a lot of native trees and shrubs, and I think you can check back with the Nature in My Backyard website. There was a wonderful presentation a year ago by Robin on native shrubs that will give you the same aesthetics that you get from some of the non-native shrubs that are out there, like burning bush. You don't want burning bush, but there's a lot of other ones. Look at the same color here. This aronia has the same color as burning bush. It's got beautiful berries and it's beneficial for the environment. Last couple of thoughts as I'm winding down here. Get some water sources for your insects. So the butterflies, if you put fruit out for the butterflies, they will come and so will other insects. So think about that. If you're putting water out for insects, what you basically are doing is put some sand and gravel and all that, and you hit it every day with water. They land on it and can suck the water out of here. They don't want standing water. They just need wet areas where they can absorb the moisture in there. Maintaining your garden, weed control for sure. Make a nice border around it because I'm sure your neighbor says, I know you're just too lazy to mow your lawn. That's why you're putting all those weeds in there. But if you have a nice border around it, it looks intentional. Um, Take care of it the first year with watering. Let the plants stand during the winter. A lot of your positive insects, beneficial insects, lay eggs in the stems of some of these plants. Do your spring cleanup. Don't do a fall cleanup. Leave it there, and then leave some leaf litter in your flower beds for the beneficial insects. But if in your vegetable beds, you want to clean all the old plant material out of your vegetable beds for the winter time. So we're finishing off here as a sort of a summary. To encourage good bugs, we have to provide the habitat they need for all these life stages we talked about. And to manage the bad bugs, we need an army of good bug predators. So we've got to have a lot of good habitat, which is going to be beautiful. Okay. And what you do for the insects or the birds or the plants benefits the other ones as well. So everything is inextricably tied together. And in the end, you are doing your thing to help resolve the biodiversity crisis that we have around the world. And you're doing it one yard at a time, and then tell your neighbors what you're doing, and maybe they will copy you. And the wonderful thing would be if the whole neighborhood did it, and maybe your municipality took some of their natural areas and did it. And in the end, it's going to all be beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So here are some resources. I'm going to leave these up right now. I haven't been monitoring to see if there's any questions or anything, but if there are any questions, Harvey, I'd be happy to make up an answer.
Fabulous. This is like a college education on so many different aspects of just creating a biodiverse and healthy environment at your home. Thank you so much. The primary first question was, how do I get the handout? And Wendy has said she'll make the handout available on the website. And then when you were talking about the Nature in My Backyard visitations, Barbara said two ladies were here last fall. I highly recommend them. Gave us a lot of good info. And then maybe this is for you, Matt. Ashley Kohanek from OSU told me, this is Carol, to plant arugula to serve as a trap crop for flea beetles to try and keep them away from your eggplants. So
Well,
something to think about.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's something worth considering. The other thing, for Japanese beetles, they say you need those beetle traps. And every professional I've talked to said if you're going to use a beetle trap with all that pheromone in it, put it in your neighbor's yard. Don't put it in your yard because you're going to attract all the Japanese beetles to your yard.
Just do
So
it.
if you have
You
a
have to,
neighbor that's not been very kind to you, maybe you can put the beetle trap on their yard.
so you
So,
have to develop some ninja tactics here.
yeah.
Thank you, Matt. This has been great. And I hope everyone, you had a good crew of people that were listening in, and you covered so much information. And again, the video is going to be made available, so everybody check it out again. And fortunately, at least not today, there will not be a test.
Thank you, Harvey.
That does it for this month's edition. Join us next month, and thanks for participating. And by all means, if you haven't checked it out, go to ohionativeplants.org for this and so many other resources. And we thank you for your participation. See you next time.